Hello and welcome back to another struggle session on the D4. I have been working on the transmission case cover this week and I think I'm about ready to start putting stuff back on it and maybe painting some stuff. We'll get to that in a little bit. Charlie, do you think we can keep it family friendly for this video? Yep, thank you. I ordered a new puller for this thing. I've mentioned that multiple times. That puller is now, FedEx is just not delivering stuff. I have 3 or 4 packages that are in a truck and it's just, they're not delivering stuff anymore. So I guess, I don't know, FedEx must be making their money somewhere else or they don't have drivers or what's going on. So can't get to this yet. So transmission cover it is. And let me kind of zoom in here and you can see what we got. So I went over this with a wire brush and I got pretty much everything off. Did get a little bit of rust that was growing on my skin off too, which was nice. Really the only bad spot is this flange here, which is fairly pitted, but that's not a big deal. There's ways around that, no big deal. These all look great. I was originally planning on painting this as is before I put it on the machine, but it really actually makes a lot more sense to put it on the machine and paint it. And I'll show you why. Like this whole flange right here is nice and machine smooth, but all the covers do not overlap. So normally if this was like a car part, what you would do is you would tape off this whole thing and then you go and paint it. But if you did that, then you'd have large areas that were left unpainted. So let me put this, like this goes here. There's nothing here, nothing here. So it really makes the most sense to get everything back on here and then hit it with paint, which I'll probably do once it's back on the machine. But in the meantime, it is kind of pretty much prepped. It just needs to be one more cleaning before paint. So I think we are good to get it back up over there and start putting some parts back on it. All right, so this is all the steering clutch stuff that I've completely disassembled and degreased. And then I spent some time with the wire brush on the bench grinder, getting everything as clean as I could get it. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm just gonna tape off stuff that doesn't need to get painted and then paint everything else. I got some, since this is bare, I'm gonna use self-etching primer and then I'll use the cat yellow paint. This stuff is all in a dry compartment. There shouldn't be grease all over, so it's okay to use just normal paint on it. This thing is like the main control. It had like the cat, like, you know, oil-proof primer or whatever on it, but so much of it had already been rusting off because this thing sits up underneath the transmission case like this. And if you saw in a previous video, there was a slight amount of water that was in that case. And so it had just been, you know, condensating on top and this whole thing was just rusted like, whoa, all this crap was rusted like crazy. The one broken part over here, I was thinking I was just going to weld it back together, but it's actually missing a fair amount of metal and it's bent. So this is what it's supposed to look like. So I found one, I think it was like $10 from General Gear. I just ordered that today. That'll be here in a couple days, unless they send it FedEx. I really need to buy a couple spray cans of this stuff because this is kind of wasting time. I keep forgetting to do it, but I really need to get this stuff painted. All right, well that's the first coat on. I've definitely learned my lesson. I'm going to order a couple cans of aerosol just because it's just a waste of time to brush it on like this when I could spray it on in about 5 minutes. This stuff needs like 8 to 12 hours to dry between coats, so it's going to take a while because I got to flip those over and do the other side of everything. Up next, I'm going to prep this stuff here and the other clutch lever over here. I'm not going to paint this stuff beforehand because this is all external. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to brush it all, clean it all, and then I'm going to assemble everything back onto the cover. And then when I put the cover back on, then I'm going to paint everything then, which I think is really the only way to do this properly. It's just kind of how the machine's designed. If you paint everything individually, it just doesn't work out as well. One other quick thing I need to do is, this is the breather for the transmission case. Let me see if it's yeah, it's completely stopped up. So I'll go ahead and take this thing apart if I can. There we go. Looks like this is a copper washer. Is it actually stuck up? Let me stick some brake cleaner in here. No, it's coming out. All right. I was figuring this was going to be full of grease or something. This is, well, what is this just, oh, okay. And it looks like this is a filter of some kind. So this looks like it might be okay. I might just try to clean that out. And then I'm going to degrease all this stuff. This looks like it's got some thread locker on it. Yeah, so this thing is supposed to, obviously you'd want to filter it because this goes into the transmission case, so. All right, I'll clean that up. I'm getting pretty close to setting this thing back up so I can install all the steering stuff again. I wire wheeled off the bottom of this and you can see it's pretty thrashed, but that's fine. The gasket surface is mostly okay. Right here though, I'm gonna have to, I don't know what happened here. It looks like someone, maybe there was a hole and they tried to weld it back in, or I don't know what, so I'm gonna need to flatten that out. And then I'm gonna make a gasket for this, a cork one. Before I do that though, I'm gonna go ahead and tap out all these holes. Clearly missing a stud here. This had a bolt on it before. I've noticed the kind of the rule of thumb on this entire machine is anytime you have a bolt or a stud going in and terminating inside of a piece, like a big piece like this, it's going to be coarse threaded. But anytime there's a nut that you attach to it, the nut and those threads are always going to be fine. So for example, this is a coarse, but this stud out here is fine. And on these, when I pulled these studs out, they were all coarse threaded that go into the block, but fine where the nut goes on. And that seems to be like every single bolt on this entire machine has kind of followed that rule. So I think I'm gonna go ahead and order a stud for this just so you can set that plate on here and it doesn't want to swing around when you pull it off. Ooh, where are you going? All right, I got the chains moved so it's balanced better. And I'm just gonna put a little bit of tension on here. Whoa, okay, that's too much. So it doesn't fall over if it loses balance. This might look a little dangerous. I've been working with this thing for a while now. It's heavy, but it's not as bad as you would think. I've lifted it up like from a flat surface up a few times. It ain't gonna tip. Like it's not going to fall directly over, and I'm not really going to be working underneath it here. And I'm going to be doing it just on the steering clutch while I'm standing up right here, which is very, very convenient for me. Well, I got a lot of parts in today. Let's see what we got here. So I got, these are the other bearings for the steering assembly. These are those seal bearings. I got the rest of those. Well, a couple people also suggested this, and I really like the idea. This is retaining compound to hold the bearings in their those races so they don't slide around. So I'll be putting those in. Got some new bushings. These are just generic bushings, and they're going to go in the clutch. I think I'm going to add a grease fitting, and then those bearings should be lubricated. This is generic return spring for the clutch. Hopefully this will work. Otherwise, I'll have to find another one. And then just a whole bunch of other hardware here. Kind of my plan for the fasteners. Maybe I should talk about that real quick. So on the fastener stuff, it's true that cat bolts are as good as or better than grade 8 bolts. Unfortunately, a lot of the bolts that were on, like for instance this cover, are either half of them are the wrong size, half of them are stripped out, and then the third half is they were just covered in wet pine needles and rusting out. So kind of the rule I'm going to follow here, and this is my own, what I've come up with, is so for anything that's internal, like internal engine stuff or parts, I'm going to reuse the original fasteners since those are pretty much unmolested and they're in good condition. They're not rusted where applicable. On something that's I would call this non-structural stuff. All the bolts on here, even the bolts that bolt to this, the rest of the transmission, I'll just use standard grade 8 bolts. And then for anything that's structural, which I would define as bolting this to the engine or bolting the winch to the back and some stuff on the engine, I will use grade 9 bolts. Like for instance, these nuts, these are just thrashed, and some of those studs are even bad too, so I will be using grade 9 for that. That's kind of my plan. I mean, you could go and buy new cat bolts, but I just, it's not in the budget pretty much. These are the bolts that we're holding the transmission cover on. Half of these aren't even original. Like a lot of them are grade 5s. You can see by the markings on them. Some are cat bolts. Like this is a cat bolt right here. But it was probably the wrong side, and if you can see that, those threads are completely squared off, and okay, those threads are completely just bad. So this is a bad bolt, but there is some advantages on these over the grade 8s. Let me show. So right here you can see the grade 8 has a shorter head, which this is nice for when if it's really dirty, you can really grip on it with a socket, where this is going to be more likely to round off. Like I said, the cat bolt is probably a higher grade bolt when it was new, but this one's just like a rusted out. You can look at those threads, they're just terrible. The nice thing about these is that they don't rust. And out here, a bolt like this that's uncovered or unpainted would rust like within a day. But these, they do not rust out here. So, like I said, that's my plan. Hopefully it works out okay. And I also got, so this came already. This is the replacement shaft that broke. And it looks like this has the same notch that the other ones do. This must be a common thing where it catches. This one's also rusty, but not as rusty as the old one was. You can still see there's some areas here where it doesn't have that grit all over it. Like mine had just like a gritty, grimy rustiness on it. So this is actually not too bad. I got the other one over here. And this one also has a bend. Let's see if this one has a bend here. So this one's still halfway of being painted, but you can see that notch is right in the same spot. This one is bigger than that one. And this one also looks like it's been turned and notched on the other side. So this must be a common thing. I'm not gonna worry about it too much. So I wanna paint the bottom of this, so what I'm gonna do is make the gasket up next. That way I can mark on here where I can paint. For some reason though, there's a lot of weld built up right here. I don't know if you can see that. I'm not sure what that's about. It goes right over where the flange is. So I'm gonna go ahead and grind this down a little bit just to flatten it out some. Someone gave me this thing a long time ago. I've never actually used it, but let me give it a shot. Well, this thing has like no torque. That took a while, but I actually went around the whole outside and kind of just smoothed it out a little bit. And then there, that's where those welds were. It's pretty ugly, but I think this will work. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut out a gasket for this thing. This is like an 1/8 inch thick gasket. It's pretty thick. Hopefully it picks up a lot of the slop in here. And I'm going to use Permatex number 3 to fix it to the transmission cover. And then on the top side, where if I ever want to take this off, I'll just put grease around it to give it a seal. Hopefully that works okay. At least my gasket fits. All right, that's on there. So over here, I think what I can do is just mark this and that, and then just cut this whole section out. Yeah, so I think this is what I'm going to cut out, and I'll leave the spaces over these open so I can actually look at the bearings if I need to. But see this whole flange right here, if this doesn't get some protection, it's just going to rust. I mean, there's only 8 bolts on this plate, and it just moisture is going to get in there. So I think it makes sense to have the gasket over that, and then just use that Permatex to bond the gasket to that surface, and it'll protect it from any further damage. Some of this might seem like overkill, but if you remember, this thing was completely rusted out inside. Even though that there was water in it, you know, condensation is still going to form in there, and it's just best to, I guess, protect what you can, hopefully. So now, that whole flange should be protected here, that it's under the plate. This flange here is going to be painted, which is another reason why this whole thing has to be painted at the same time. But that'll protect that, because that plate doesn't want to seal very well since it's kind of so long and bendy, and there's only 8 bolts in it. The other nice thing is these holes here are the bolt holes for bolting in that clutch control thing from the bottom. And now that there's a gasket over that, it'll seal it, and so moisture can't get in there. So anyway, I think we got a good system here. This primer is really good. It dries super fast. All right, well, I'm waiting for that to dry. I'm gonna hone out these other ones. So I think I've already done these. Yeah, I've done these 2. So I'm gonna do these 2 next. It goes pretty quick. I think I gotta clean this hone off. It's all covered in grease. It's not working very well. Oh, yeah, that one's good. Oh yeah, that one's good. Steering clutch components are all painted. It's not the most beautiful paint job, but it's better than leaving them just completely unprotected as they were. Over here, this stuff was soaking in the degreaser for a day. You can see it strips all the way up to here. This is how far it was soaking. It strips it out pretty good. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take all this stuff with the wire wheel over on the bench grinder there, and just take anything that's loose all the way off. Some of this stuff looks bad, but like this is like the dipstick tube, but it'll come back real nice. It just needs this brushed off. So I'll brush it off, and then I'll you know, put some oil on it so it doesn't. Yeah, it just needs a good cleaning, a good brushing. I've been to this spot and this, like a project like this, so many times now. It's just a matter of cleaning, degreasing, and then painting. This is the oiling cup for the main clutch. I think I'm gonna. I've been debating whether I should try to bend this back or not. It just something this thin, you know, it's always gonna crack. Okay, got this stuff as wired wheel as I can. I'll have to go in and kind of touch up some of this stuff, but clutch cover, that inspection cover is aluminum. I did not know that. That's interesting. No, I'm not sure why they would do that. The only other thing is this. I remember when I took this apart, this goes to the interlock and it's inside the transmission case cover, so I'm gonna have to paint this one. Everything else I'm just gonna prime, because this is all external stuff. Oh, look at that. That fits perfectly in there. I think that's it right there. Well, it's not perfect, but what's that saying? Like, perfection is the enemy of good enough, or something like that. All right, well, this is all primed and ready to go on. The transmission case. Got a lot more fasteners in too. And you know, I used to have a nice fastener system. Let me show you. I got this rack here a couple years ago. I had Imperial on one side and metric on the other, and then one day my 2-year-old came in here for about 5 minutes, and he did a number on it. Let me tell you, he ripped all the tags out, and it's just all mixed up. So I'm not going to spend time right now organizing that. I'll just grab stuff as I need it. The last bracket I forgot I had to paint was up here, so it's drying right now. And I think that's about it. I did overlook this thing. I still have to take this apart and check the boot out and clean it up. But it's the last, I think it's the last thing that I forgot about. So I'll burn that bridge when I get to it later on. All right, well, I'm gonna start putting this steering clutch controls back together. To be honest, I don't remember how it goes back together. Let me show you the parts diagram. This is like the least helpful page in the entire book. It's shot from a side view. So they really should have included another page with an overhead view. But I think I can kind of Encyclopedia Brown this thing back together, just based on these parts. First step though is I got to clean these flanges off. I already did this one right here, just because if you have a fastener on a painted flange, it's never going to tighten. So I'll just use my die grinder here, the wire brush. Doesn't take much. Yeah, like that one's already good. You know, these bottles of brake cleaner are like $2 each at Home Depot. Way cheaper than the auto stores. I'm ready to put these first 4 bearings in. They have this little groove here where I'm going to put this retaining compound in, but they do have a little hole here. Not really sure how much to use here. Just kinda, that's probably way too much. Wipe up the edge. So these bearings were, I think, $25 each, which doesn't seem too bad, but you need 8 of them, so it kind of does add up. I never did try to locate the original cat bearings, but I'm assuming those would probably be maybe a little bit more. Who knows? All right, next step is, I don't know. I guess look at it and try to figure out how this goes together. I found this really blurry reprint in the operator's manual. So maybe this goes in here. I remember there was like these were really hard to get out, and I think they came through here. Actually, it would probably be like this, wouldn't it? These were running, oh, maybe those were in here. So there was a pin in here. Yeah, this went through, I think. No? Yeah. This went through. And then this was on the other side with the spring. And there's a key. There's a key in here. Okay. Yeah, maybe I should remove the paint on these. Probably should. And then I can grease it all up. Yeah, this goes to the transmission case. This goes through. Okay, this is not too bad. Where do these go to? I don't remember. Oh, these must go up here. No, that doesn't make sense. There's these bolts here with these spacers, and they go through like that, and that goes underneath here, and then this goes up to the handle controls. I think there was stops in there. So what needs to happen is I need to remove all the paint off of here, like basically all these flanges. I still have to do all that. And then I think I also want to remove it off of here, since this is contacting that right there. So I'm going to be removing a lot of paint here. All right, I got all these flanges cleaned off, and this is just to prevent stuff from getting in the bearings or from fasteners from getting tight. And I can already tell this stuff needs grease all over because it just rubs. A little grease on here. Okay, so I think these go through. These are keyed though, and they only go on one way. So the question is, do they go like this? I think they go like that, because look how, see that cut out there? So that's got to be right, like that. Yeah, that's probably right. I remember these had these pins that are basically just gravity held. Yeah, this looks, I think this is right. This feels good. This is ready to go in. Oh, I do need to put these on. So, is it like that? It's got to be. There's this key. Then this is for the spring. This looks like it's upside down though. Is this right? Now those pins keep falling out of the bottom, that's okay. Now the other nuts that like hold these on, they had these thread locker, like they have like a rubber. This must be, someone must have done this later. So I replaced those, but on these nuts they just had normal nuts. But you can see that that notch is actually caused from it hitting over here, which if you're pulling, it feels like it's an over center position, which it shouldn't be at. So I'm going to say that's due to bad adjustment. Something was out of adjustment. Last thing I got to do, I just got to throw in these adjustment screws. Nice benefit of having stuff tapped out before you put new fasteners in it. Just everything is hand screwed in. No sockets needed. Speeds it up. Well, before I put that thing in, I remember that the last thing I took out was the actual control handles, so I'll put those in next. I did go ahead and wipe out everything in here, clean it up a little bit. I found that mineral spirits works the best just with a rag, and I go through a lot of rags, but it cleans it up real nice. Should probably wipe that out first. Okay, if I remember right, I think this goes in here. The handle goes on here, and then this goes in on the other side, and those long rods attached to this. So I think this is kind of ringing a bell here. Okay. So these, there's two of these obviously, and they are not the same part number. So obviously they are directional. Wait, no, it's got to be like that. That wouldn't work. So it's got to be this one, because this link's on this side. It hits right there on the spring. I don't know how much adjustment's available here. So I need to tighten these bolts. I remember before though that the steering clutch handles would jiggle back and forth. So I'm going to put the steering clutch handles on first and see if there's any adjustment for that. This one on here, and then that got in there. I'm not sure if this is the left or the right. Well, this has got to be the left one because it's, yeah, that's right. Okay, this is the right side. Okay, there's a little bit, yeah, there's that same place still there. Yeah, so this is sliding back and forth, but when it's all the way forward, I cannot pull it in anymore. It moves the whole shaft. So it's up, that's like a two-size shaft. It gets bigger, so it's obviously hitting that. So that's the best I can do is I'll just go ahead and tighten this one down. And then I think I can probably tap this on just a little bit more, and then I'll tighten that one down. Let me give that a shot. This did not have anything on it, but I'm going to put some Loctite on there obviously to tighten that. And we'll call that good. Hopefully that doesn't go all the way through. It looks like it might even go, that screw might go all the way through and hit. Oh yeah, there's a dent right there. Look at that. I wonder what that's from. If that's from the spring, yeah, it's like you shouldn't even have, this is a 1.5 inch screw, but I'm wondering if maybe you should use a 1 1/4. The tip of that screw is hitting in there. These screws are too long. So let me find, I mean, you only probably need like 1 inch on there. Okay, so I got a 1 1/4 grade 8 fastener right here, and look at that, that's just about perfect. Once that tightens down, this is just barely gonna be sticking over. I don't know why, so those ones, the original screws in there were 2 inch. So I don't know why they would do that. I guess maybe that's just what they had handy to them at the time or whatever, but we'll go ahead and do the right size fastener in there so it doesn't hit if it ever... I would think it would hit even if you have that spring in there. Like if you really let go of it and it slams the head, it's going to hit. And both of the original screws I checked, they both had big dents in them, which I hadn't noticed till now. I realize I'm kind of nitpicking this thing, but you know, why not have it as close to perfect as you can get it when you're going to put it back together. Just like it to be not loose and jiggly. Oh, there's like there's a tiny bit of play, like, but there's no resistance. I think that's perfect. I like that. Okay, both handles in. There's just no play on these things. It's really nice, it's really tight. That one has a tiny bit, but you know what that is? That's the shaft. The shaft is a little bit worn, where this one is a little bit tighter. All right, I'm gonna put these grease fittings in. I always use Permatex #2 for threads. I use it in like cooling systems on cars, like high pressure stuff, and it's never leaked on me. So we'll try it on grease fittings and see how that works. And there's a few other threaded things on here, like this down here, and I thought there was something else that's going to need sealant because it goes right into the transmission case. These last few bearings in. Way too far. All right, I'm going to replace these studs here with new ones because these are all bent and broken. And then there's like 2 studs. I couldn't find a replacement for these. These are special nuts that ride in. Was it here? It must have been here because it doesn't fit in here. So this must go like that. I might have to check the pictures for that one. It's a janky system, let me tell you. Whatever they came up with for this thing. But let me get these in here and then I'll look at I think I have in the parts manual, it shows how it goes. You know, I just got this in and then I looked over here. This comes all the way through. So that's a potential spot for water to get in. So I'm gonna go and I'm gonna put that same Permatex #2 on the stud, the end. I could also use Loctite, but it's gonna have this nut to lock it. But I just don't want water to get in this thing. So like that, so it sits in here like this, and then this goes on, and then I'll put some grease here. I guess that's right. Okay, put this thing in. I'm not gonna tighten these in here first. I was gonna replace these fasteners, but I can't find, this is like 1.5 inches with a partial thread. I don't want to use fully threaded ones because it's going to help align it. But I couldn't find any, so I'll just reuse these old ones. They look okay. Okay, controls are back in. I just got to put that shaft in. I'm going to go ahead and let the bearings that are Loctited in there dry overnight though. You can see everything's in right here. So, looks like when I take this cover off, I will have access to these. I pulled them out, but these nuts or these screws to adjust the stop. There's a bend in both of these, and it's just on this side. It's not on that side. So I'll find out where these go exactly. So it's either like that. Well, it's definitely not like that because it's lined up down here with the hole. So these fasteners had this spacer. I replaced the fastener, obviously. And then from the other side, it had some kind of lock nut. It wasn't like a nylon one. It was it had like thread locker on it or something. So I'm assuming it's because you don't want to over tighten this because then it won't rotate. So it just needs to be tightened a little bit. So I'll put this on here. This is a pretty beefy spring, as you can tell, so it ain't something you can easily pull apart. Oh, yep, there we go. I've definitely done something wrong here. This is pulling the clutch back, and it's going around. It's not supposed to do that. I think I have a shaft on here backwards. These are all keyed, so I'm gonna have to think about this for a second. Did I get one swapped? So when I bring it back, it'll click. It does not return by itself, which I'm pretty sure I thought it was supposed to do. And also, so that clicking is that pin right there. I don't think that's right. It doesn't seem like it should be right. I'm not sure exactly what's going on here, if this is right or not. I mean, this stuff's keyed up, so unless I got to swap left to right, I think I might know what the problem is. Because this stuff's so all keyed, I don't think there's anything I can mess up in here. But these, either of these could go on either side. So if this one was over here, then this shaft would be pretty much straight up and down instead of bent like this. And I think that's what it's supposed to be like. Because I looked at an old picture and these shafts were like straight. They weren't bent. So I'm like 90% sure that's my problem. So I'm gonna swap those out real quick. Unfortunately, I have to take all the shafts off, the bottom shafts. It's really not that bad though. Let me do that real quick and give it a shot. Yep, there we go. Well, I think this matches the picture better. So these rods were straight up and down in all the pictures I saw and in the book. The real question though is, do I need to... So I think this bend goes like that. So it's actually bent. The bend is right here. So I'll give that a shot. I'm gonna do just this side before I put the whole thing back together to see. All right, it is the next day. I was thinking about this thing for a solid 24 hours, and I think I figured out what's going on. So I made a few mistakes. First one was, as I pointed out, these were on the wrong side. And I actually found in the parts manual, let me show you here. There's several parts that are left-hand, right-hand in here. So that's what I just pointed to is this. And there's a left-hand, right-hand. The handles are left-hand, right-hand. And then there's shaft up at the top, or in the back, I guess, would be left-hand, right-hand. So I looked at the part numbers, and fortunately I got these shafts right. These are left-hand, right-hand. I had these swapped. And then I also had the control handles swapped. So, whoops. You know, mistakes happen. It's all right. There's no shame in it. I guess the only shame's covering it up. So I got all that fixed. And then the other thing that was throwing me off, I'll show you here, is when you pull the handle back to disengage the clutch, you see how there's like that click, that over center? Well, I was getting confused because I was thinking that this spring is supposed to return it, but that's just not the case. After thinking about it, well, it's the springs on the actual steering clutch that are going to return it. And I think the point of this spring is just to balance the whole assembly out, so it's easy going both ways, I'm guessing. So I think I'm going to call this done. And before I permanently attach it to the machine, I'm maybe just going to lay it on top and just try out all the linkages, the main clutch and the steering clutches, just to verify everything's in there right. I'm like 85% sure this is done right. We'll see. The only other thing it said to do in the book was to stretch these out to 10¼ inches. So I just adjusted these. So everything's in there now. The bottom 3 bolts are in. I need to put in these three top bolts, but then I noticed that these top bolts come out right here, right? So I'm gonna be putting thread sealer on those, just because that's just another water ingress point right here, is a coarse threaded bolt coming out. Pine needles and wet stuff, leaves are gonna sit right here, and the water is gonna soak right into that case. So the other 3 are right here, which is inside of this gasket covered area, so that should be somewhat safe. But you know, there was a lot of water in this case, and whatever I can do to prevent that from happening again. So on the other 3 bolts that are already in there, I put Loctite on there, but as far as I know, Loctite does not seal against moisture because it dries hard and this stuff stays pliable. I'm not gonna gasket or RTV anything yet because I might be taking them off later. So I got these are the screw stops, or the spring stops, and I'll show you what they do once it's in there. So all those springs do is when you pull the steering clutch back and it swings forward too fast, they just provide that little cushion right there. That's all they do. So I think this goes like this. I don't want to use RTV on this one, especially you can adjust it. There's some adjustments in there you can do. And I forget what these holes are for. I think they're covered up, but I forget what they do exactly. We'll find out probably in a second here. Yeah, I'm really not sure what that hole's for. Okay, that's it for the steering clutch stuff. So we can look on the inside now. Got the cover on. You know what those holes are for that I was just talking about? They come out right above these rods. I'm almost wondering if they're like an inspection port so you can see if these rods are broken. Obviously one of my rods was broken. So maybe that's something for like that, but hopefully I never need them. These are the oiling ports for the clutch, the steering clutches. Get some more thread locker on here. Or thread sealer. Uh-oh, am I gonna be able to do this with the... Oh. Yeah, that'll probably work. It's always something. I don't remember where these were. I think it was like, was it like that? Maybe we'll go with this. That way I can reach this oiling port and I can still get that back on. Another good reason not to RTV anything until you're good and ready, because I'd already be scraping off RTV right now to get these things in. Got some new studs for here. I don't have the shifter rebuilt, as I mentioned before. I think it's going like this. All right, this is the breather for the transmission case. This came with a gasket, a copper ring, so I'll put that on. But I put thread sealer on just in case. Don't want any water going in the transmission case. Okay. And then I think this went on here. This filter's kind of, I cleaned it out and air flows through it, but it's just kind of ratty. But I think it'll be okay. And then, is this a fine? Yeah, so I'll just put some thread sealer in this. Probably don't want to tighten this too much, huh? Okay. I do have new studs coming for here, but I'll just put these in here for now, just to hold it. All right, let's talk about the clutch linkage here. So this goes right over these studs. And the main clutch shaft goes on here where the handle hooks onto. And then there's another bushing in here, which I have the replacements for. But I'm gonna modify this one and I'll show why in a sec. By the way, you may have just noticed that these handles are now backwards from they were before. I went and looked back at some old pictures and this is how they actually were on the machine. There's two things going on. Either because this is a retrofit, those were not the original handles, something screwy is going on. The part numbers are kind of like, the last number is, so if it's a 7 or an 8, like 7 means right hand and 8 means left hand. And the last number is like a hand, it's like stamped with a different die. So there's something squirrely going on. Either the book's wrong or I don't know, but that's how it was originally, so I'm gonna leave it. And it makes sense because you're sitting right here and you want those to be where you can reach them. So, okay, this thing sits right over the studs where the shifter are for the transmission. And this shaft goes in here and then the clutch handle goes on one side and that has a linkage to the actual clutch stuff. So originally this had those aftermarket steel bushings with some kind of fiber in them. And if you look in there, you can see there's a bushing area and a bushing area, and then in the middle it's kind of opened up more. So I couldn't find the original cat bushings. They didn't look too hard, but I found these. These are just generic brass bearings or bronze bearings. And they fit, the outside diameter fits here. I can press these in. And then I machined out the inside with the brake hone again to just match this. I mean, they're not super tight on here. So the plan here is I'm going to drill a hole in here in the middle and put a grease fitting here. That way I can pump this thing with grease and keep these lubed up. And we'll see how that works. The only downside is there's not going to be any seals on the end, so the grease is going to kind of tend to come out after a while. But I'll give it a shot. I mean, if it doesn't work, I can always just plug the hole and locate the original bearings or the whatever bushings. I guess they're technically bearings, and put those in. So this is kind of something I can just try, but I think it'll work. The tip of this thing was completely mushroomed, so I kind of ground it down with an angle grinder. Someone had really been banging on this thing. You can kind of still see it probably. I always like modifications. You can always renege if you need to. Okay, got the new bushings pressed in. And by the way, a subscriber sent me this bearing and bushing driver and puller kit. I think Brian sent it to me. Thank you very much. This might be the nicest thing I own now, but I use that to press those in, and I'm about to use it to knock those in too. Very handy. There's so many different sizes there. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and get this. Just for a little bit, I'm gonna put this shifter assembly in so I can lock this thing down. I think it went in like this. Okay, oh man, there's just no play on there. That's great. So I think the lever went here, and then so I need to pound these in. So here's the old fittings, and you can see the grooves are pretty much like right there, completely worn out. Those grooves, like in a previous video, they're supposed to be full of graphite. This is a dry lube system. So I got new old stock, even stamped with a cat part number on it, brand new bushings. So I need to pop one in on this side and then one on the other side. All right, I got the shaft here that goes in here. It's got a key 180 off, so I don't think it matters which way it goes in. I'm pretty sure you aren't supposed to grease these because they have this graphite. It's a dry grease in there, and grease is just gonna attract. Oh man, that is tight. That is nice. This is for the interlock over here. So how does this go on here? Let's see. I believe there's a little thing in there. Huh? Was there? Oh, there was a shaft on here, I think. That's right. There was that bent shaft was on there. So this went down there to here, I think. It's starting to come back to me like that. Okay. So that goes on there, and I probably need to grind the paint off. Looks like this surface. I'll check these surfaces and this surface. Okay, I got the cotter pin on there. It's really brutal to get on there, and I almost forgot about the cotter pin up here on that castle nut, but I think we're about done here with this thing. Hopefully this is the right key. Looks possibly right. Yep. And I got everything ground off here. I think that needs to be ground off. I'll find out in a second. Okay, so I need to get a cotter pin on there. I still have a bunch of these nylon nuts left, so I'm gonna use one on here, just since it's somewhere I don't want to mess around with later. I'm not gonna tighten this down yet until I know how far it's supposed to go. All right, I got 3 pieces of linkage left. See if we can figure this out. Is this keyed? Nope. This must go in here somewhere. I'm pretty sure this goes right here. Pretty tight there, not going back and forth. I'm not going to tighten anything right now unless I absolutely have to, because there's so much linkage here. And I think, let me see which way this goes. This can go either way. And I've unadjusted this so I could not paint the threads. And I've consulted a picture, and this is the proper orientation. It's a little bit off, but not too bad. Right, there we go. Okay, I think that's the clutch linkage. I think this is all right. I'm not sure why it's not moving here. The interlock teeth had curled in over, they can kind of get over-centered. So the only jiggling is that. Is this jiggling? No jiggling there really. And I bet you once I shoot this thing full of grease, that jiggling is gonna go way down too. That's way better than it was though. I forgot about this thing. That's what it was. I got some thread sealer on there. This is all cleaned out. I still need to get something to put in there to protect from dirt getting in there. And I forgot to paint this, which goes up here, so whoops, I'll do that later. But I think that's basically it. Get this on here. Still have to make a gasket for that. And like I said, gaskets and sealing, I'm going to do that after this is on the machine and everything is verified as working. Otherwise, I'm just setting myself up for heartache. So what else do I have to do? Just rebuild this shifter. And I think, look at that, so smooth. Nothing's hitting. I think we're good. That was a lot of work, let me tell you. Let's take one last look here. All this back together. Painted and mostly functioning. So looks a lot nicer than it did. I remember when I first sat on this machine and I looked down at my feet and I said, first of all, what is all this crap? What does it do? And why is it so rusty? But you know, once I clean up this, it's gonna look really nice. And then once it's painted, it's gonna look really nice. And well, yeah, that's about that. All right, well, I'm gonna end the video there. That was kind of a long 2 weeks, but I made a lot of progress. I learned a lot this week. I rebuilt this thing several times now, trying to figure out how to get it back together. I'm like 70% confident that it's done right. We'll find out once it's back on the machine. So hopefully this was entertaining. I'm not sure how long this video will be, but it was a lot of film. I think my memory card's about maxed out here. So once again, guys, thanks a lot for watching, and I'll be back real soon.